The Witcher came out in October 2007. It was a janky Polish RPG exclusive to PC that ran like absolute garbage on most machines. But what's certain? It changed everything about what European game development could achieve. CD Projekt Red, a company that literally started by selling pirated games at Polish flea markets, somehow convinced fantasy author Andrzej Sapkowski to give them the rights to his books for about $9,500. Sapkowski thought video games were stupid and wanted cash up front instead of royalties. That decision cost him millions, and honestly, he's still bitter about it. But here's the thing. This wasn't just another fantasy RPG trying to copy BioWare. This was a studio saying, fuck your sanitized fantasy worlds. We're making something that feels like it crawled out of an Eastern European folklore nightmare. The Witcher, 2007. The beautiful disaster that started everything. The Witcher released in 2007 and was simultaneously the worst and most ambitious RPG of that year. You played as Geralt of Rivia, a genetically modified monster hunter with amnesia. Because of course he had amnesia. It was 2007. Every protagonist needed amnesia. The game used BioWare's Aurora engine from Neverwinter Nights, except CD Projekt Red modified it so heavily that it barely functioned. Loading times were measured in geological epochs. The voice acting sounded like they grabbed random Polish developers and made them speak English at gunpoint. The combat was interesting. 3 stances: fast, strong, and group. You had to time your clicks to chain attacks together, turning combat into a rhythm game. It wasn't action combat, it wasn't tactical combat, it was this weird hybrid that nobody asked for but somehow worked once you figured it out. But here's what made it special. The moral ambiguity. There was no good versus evil meter. You chose between shit options and shittier options. The Scoia'tael versus Order of the Flaming Rose conflict? Both sides were assholes. Help the elven terrorists or the human racists? Your choice, but everyone suffers regardless. And let's address the elephant in the room, the sex cards. Every time Geralt had sex, you got a collectible card with nude artwork of that character. It was peak 2007 gaming cringe. Even CD Projekt Red admits this was stupid. But somehow, between the jank and the sex cards, there was genuine brilliance. The story about Salamandra stealing Witcher mutagens was actually compelling. Characters like Zoltan, Dandelion, not Jaskier yet, and Triss were immediately memorable. The atmosphere was oppressive and dark in ways Western RPGs weren't attempting. The Enhanced Edition in 2008 fixed most technical issues, added new animations, and reduced loading times by 80%. Suddenly, the game was actually playable. 800,000 copies sold in 10 months. For a debut game from Poland? That was insane. Critics were confused but intrigued. Players either loved it or deleted it after an hour. But everyone agreed, these Polish developers were onto something different. The Witcher 2: Assassins of Kings, 2011. The assassination of low expectations. The Witcher 2 dropped in May 2011 and basically told BioWare and Bethesda to sit the fuck down. CD Projekt Red built their own RED engine from scratch because they were tired of fighting Aurora's limitations. The result? One of the best-looking RPGs ever made at that point. This game was gorgeous. Like, your GPU is crying but you don't care gorgeous. The story was Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones was cool on TV. Geralt gets framed for killing King Foltest, has to clear his name while uncovering a conspiracy involving sorceresses, dragons, and kingslayers. The narrative was dense, political, and assumed you were smart enough to follow along without hand-holding. But here's the genius move. Chapter 2 was completely different depending on one choice. Side with Yorveth the Scoia'tael commander? You get Virgin, a completely different city with unique quests. Side with Vernon Roche, the Blue Stripes commander? You're in Henselt's camp with entirely different content. This wasn't just a different cutscene. This was 10 plus hours of completely different game. Most players didn't even know they missed half the content on their first playthrough. The combat went full action RPG. Rolling, dodging, real-time swordplay. It was basically The Witcher meets Dark Souls, except it came out before Dark Souls made that comparison possible. Preparation mattered. Drinking potions before fights, laying traps, using the right oils on your swords. You couldn't just hack and slash through everything. The characters were incredible. Letho of Goulet, the main antagonist, wasn't evil. He was doing what he thought was right for his school of witchers. The Lodge of Sorceresses had complex motivations. Every faction made sense from their perspective. This was mature storytelling that treated players like adults. Console versions brought The Witcher to Xbox 360 players who finally understood what PC players were excited about. 2 million copies sold by 2012. Metacritic scores in the high 80s. CD Projekt Red went from that Polish studio to, holy shit, what are they making next? The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, 2015. The open world that killed other open worlds. The Witcher 3 launched May 19, 2015, and honestly, it made every other RPG look like amateur hour. This wasn't just an evolution, it was a complete reimagining of what an open-world RPG could be. The map was massive, but every quest, even the smallest side mission, had a story. That random contract to kill a griffin? 3-act narrative with moral implications. The treasure hunt in some cave? Environmental storytelling about a tragic love affair. Let's talk about the Bloody Baron questline, because holy shit! This alcoholic, wife-beating piece of garbage somehow becomes sympathetic through masterful writing. The botchling scene, where you can either fight his miscarried daughter turned monster or perform a ritual to give her peace, that hit different. Adult themes handled with actual maturity, not just gore and tits for shock value. The world felt alive. NPCs had schedules, weather-affected gameplay. Your choices from previous games imported and mattered. Nilfgaard versus Redania versus Radovid's witch hunts. The war felt real. You'd ride through battlefields seeing hanged men and burned villages. This wasn't sanitized fantasy. This was War Crimes, the video game. Combat finally clicked. It was accessible but deep, challenging but fair. The skill tree actually mattered. Alchemy builds, sign builds, combat builds, all viable. Enemy variety was insane. Neckers required different tactics than drowners, which differed from griffins. Boss fights against the Wild Hunt generals were spectacular. But the game launched broken. Like, really broken. Roach, your horse, would spawn on rooftops. The inventory system was a disaster. Frame rate issues on consoles, game-breaking bugs. The internet should have destroyed CD Projekt Red, but here's what happened instead. They fixed everything. Free DLC every week, massive patches, constant communication. They turned a disaster launch into a redemption story. Then came the DLCs that were better than most full games. Hearts of Stone, October 2015, was a 10-hour masterpiece about immortality and its cost. Gonzalo Dim might be gaming's best villain, basically Satan as a traveling merchant. The wedding possession scene, the riddle at the end, pure storytelling excellence. Blood and Wine, May 2016, was a 30-hour expansion that could have been Witcher 4. Toussaint was gorgeous, colorful, a complete tonal shift that somehow worked. The vampire storyline with Regis and Detlef was emotional and complex. The Land of a Thousand Fables quest was surreal genius. This DLC won RPG of the Year awards. A DLC won Game of the Year awards. Let that sink in. Sales? 10 million in less than a year. 50 million by 2023. Game of the Year everywhere. 800 plus awards. It proved that single-player RPGs weren't dead, that consumers would pay for quality, and that Polish developers could compete with anyone. And honestly, it embarrassed everyone. BioWare's next RPG, Mass Effect Andromeda. Bethesda's follow-up, Fallout 76. Everyone else shit the bed, while CD Projekt Red redefined the genre. The spin-offs, when success goes to your head. Thronebreaker, The Witcher Tales, 2018, was actually brilliant. A 30-hour RPG built around Gwent mechanics where you played Queen Mev during the Nilfgaardian invasion. Great story, beautiful art, innovative gameplay. Nobody played it. Released between Red Dead 2 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it sold maybe 200,000 copies. Timing is everything, and this had none. Gwent, The Witcher card game, 2018, started as a mini-game in Witcher 3 that players loved more than actual quests. CD Projekt Red thought, let's make it standalone and compete with Hearthstone. Good idea. Poor execution. It's still running, but nobody talks about it. Peak striking while the iron is lukewarm. The Witcher Monster Slayer 2021 was Pokemon Go but with drowners. Augmented reality monster hunting sounded cool until you realized it was a generic mobile game with Witcher paint. Shut down in 2023. Nobody mourned its passing. The present and future. From cyberpunk disaster to redemption. After Witcher 3's success, CD Projekt Red thought they were invincible. Cyberpunk 2077 proved otherwise. Launching broken, getting delisted from PlayStation's store, becoming a meme. But here's the thing. They're doing the same redemption arc. Patches, updates, Phantom Liberty expansion. They learned from Witcher 3's launch. Now we're getting The Witcher Remake, TBA. Original game rebuilt in Unreal Engine 5. The Witcher 4, 2027 plus. New trilogy starring Ciri as a full Witcher. Multiple spin-offs in development. The recent Witcher 4 trailer at Game Awards 2024 showing Ciri as the protagonist, the internet lost its mind. Some people angry about woke agenda. Others excited for fresh perspective. Classic Witcher, dividing people before it even releases. The Legacy. Looking back, the Witcher series proved that you didn't need a massive budget or established IP to compete globally. You needed passion, talent, and the balls to make something different. It proved that European game development could stand toe-to-toe with American and Japanese studios. That mature storytelling in games meant more than just violence and sex. It meant complex characters, difficult choices, and consequences that mattered. That players would embrace foreign mythology and complicated names if the quality was there. From selling pirated games at Polish markets to creating one of gaming's most valuable franchises. That's the real Witcher story. And honestly, if a studio from Poland using a book series nobody outside Eastern Europe knew about could create the standard for open-world RPGs, what's everyone else's excuse? The Witcher didn't just change how we think about RPGs, it changed how we think about what's possible in game development. Current status. Waiting for Ciri's Witcher trials while replaying Witcher 3 for the 8th time and still finding new content. And Geralt? He's probably in Toussaint, retired with Yennefer, drinking wine and playing Gwent. Earned it, honestly.